Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and like the video so you won't miss our true horror stories. The file landed on my desk at exactly 6 o'clock in the morning. It hit so hard that I almost spilled my coffee on it. Captain Harrison stood next to my desk and looked at me in a way that told me this was not a normal Tuesday. "Martinez," he said quietly so no one else could hear, "come to the meeting room right now. Don't bring anyone else." I had worked for Harrison for 3 years. We went on 2 trips to Afghanistan together and did many training practices. I had never seen him this worried. Not when we lost a group of trucks to a bomb outside Kandahar. Not when our bosses got mad at us for that accident where we shot our own people. This was different. The meeting room already had people in it. 3 men in suits who looked like they worked for the government, but they kept their badges hidden. A woman in an Army intelligence uniform who I thought I knew but couldn't remember her name. And Major Brooks from Special Operations, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Harrison locked the door behind us. The sound of that lock made me feel cold inside. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room," Harrison started. "You're being allowed into a secret mission. Sign here." The papers I had to sign were thicker than my divorce papers. I signed without reading them. You don't question orders at my level. And the feeling in that room told me this was bigger than anything I'd ever done before. The woman from intelligence put a map on the screen. Eastern Kentucky, deep in the Appalachian Mountains. A red circle marked a place I'd never heard of, Copper Creek. 3 weeks ago, she began, a group of 7 people doing land surveys went missing in this area. They were mapping old coal mines for the state. 7 people. No distress calls. No emergency signals. They just stopped reporting. I'd heard this story before. Regular people get lost in the mountains. We send search and rescue. Everyone goes home. But they don't lock doors and make you sign secret papers for missing hikers. Local police did the first search, she continued. They found the survey team's cars at the entrance to what used to be a mining town called Copper Creek. The town has been empty since 1978. But that's where things get strange. She clicked to the next picture. It was a satellite photo, but something was wrong with it. The date showed it was recent, but where there should have been old, broken-down buildings covered in plants, I saw buildings with good roofs and vehicles that shouldn't be in a ghost town. "Heat cameras show about 40 people in that place," Brooks said, speaking for the first time. "The problem is, according to every record we have, nobody lives there. Nobody is supposed to be there." Harrison leaned forward. The survey team's last message said they found recent digging. Professional work. Someone's been digging, and they're not part of any mining company we know of. The man in the suit on the left finally spoke. "We think this is connected to thefts from military supply trucks over the past 18 months. Weapons, communication equipment, survival gear. All stolen within 200 miles of this location." My stomach felt tight. "You think someone's building their own base? Like a militia?" "We don't know what to think," Harrison said. "That's why we're sending you. A small group to look around. Get in, figure out what's happening, find the survey team if they're still alive, and report back. Don't fight unless you absolutely have to." The intelligence woman pulled up people's files. "You'll take Sergeants Jackson and Thompson from your unit, Specialist Rodriguez from Signals, and Corporal Reeves from Medical. 5 people. Small group. You go in tomorrow night," Brooks said. "Tomorrow?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "That's not much time to prepare." "We don't have time," Brooks said. "Whatever's happening in that town is getting worse." 2 nights ago, a state police officer reported seeing lights in the hills around Copper Creek. He went to check it out. His police car was found burned on a logging road. "He's missing." The room went quiet. A missing police officer changed everything. This wasn't just about lost regular people anymore. Harrison stood up. "Martinez, you've worked in Afghanistan's mountains. This isn't that different. Except these mountains are in our own country. And whoever's up there shouldn't be. Your team leaves from Campbell at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Helicopter drop-off 5 miles from the target. You walk in, watch, and report. Questions?" I had many questions. Who were these people? What were they doing with stolen military equipment? Why that specific empty town? But I knew better than to ask questions that nobody could answer yet. What are the rules for fighting? I asked instead. Self-defense only. We need information, not a big fight. If this is what we think it might be, we can't let them get scared and run away or worse. The meeting ended, but Harrison kept me back. When we were alone, his face changed a little. Tom, he said, using my first name for maybe the third time ever. There's more to this that I can't tell you. People above me are watching this mission. Be careful up there. These mountains have a way of making people disappear if they're not careful. #missing survey team first warning. I spent the rest of the day choosing my team and studying every map, every photo, every piece of information about Copper Creek. The town had been a busy coal community until a mine crash in 1978 killed 15 workers. The mining company left, the workers moved away, and the town officially died. But someone had brought it back to life. Jackson was my first choice. He was built like a football player, stayed calm under pressure, and he'd grown up in Tennessee's mountains. He knew Appalachian land better than anyone in our unit. Thompson was our sniper, quiet and careful, with eyes that could spot movement 1,000 yards away. Rodriguez had a gift for electronics and had spent time with the NSA before joining the Army. Reeves was young but solid, trained in combat medicine and mountain rescue. We met in a secure meeting room that afternoon. I told them what I could, which wasn't much. So we're going into dangerous territory looking for missing regular people with no idea who or what we're facing, Thompson summed up. Pretty much, I admitted. Sounds like Tuesday, Jackson grinned, but his eyes didn't smile. Rodriguez was already working on equipment. Heat scopes, night vision, satellite phone, and a drone if we can get permission. I want every electronic advantage we can get. No drone, I said. They want this quiet. We go in dark. No electronic signal they can follow. Then we're doing this old school, Rodriguez said. Maps, compasses, and our own eyes. We spent the evening going over ways to sneak in. The land around Copper Creek was brutal. Steep hills, thick forest, and only 2 roads in or out. Both would be watched if someone was running an operation there. We come in from the north, I decided. Longer walk, but the ridge line lets us watch from high ground before we go in. Weather's supposed to be clear, Reeves said, checking forecasts. Cold front moving in the day after tomorrow, but we should be out by then. Should be. In my experience, should be was where missions went wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept studying the satellite photos, trying to understand what I was seeing. The buildings in Copper Creek weren't just lived in. They looked taken care of. New roofs, cleared roads, even what might have been solar panels on some buildings. This wasn't homeless people or squatters. This was organized. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Harrison. There's been a development, he said quickly. State police found the trooper. He's alive but badly hurt. He was left at a hospital in Hazard with a note pinned to his shirt. What did it say? Stop looking or more will follow. The cold feeling in my body turned to heavy dread. They know we're interested. Maybe. Or maybe the note is for local police. Either way, your mission hasn't changed. But Tom, someone up there is organized enough to grab a cop, hold him, and confident enough to return him with a warning. This isn't some mountain drug lab or doomsday preppers. This is something else. After he hung up, I stood at my window looking toward the mountains. Somewhere out there in those old hills that had hidden outlaws, runaways, and secrets for centuries, someone had built something they didn't want found. Tomorrow night, we were going to find it anyway. I pulled out my gear and started checking it piece by piece. Rifle, handgun, extra bullets, medical kit, radio, GPS, maps, compass. The same ritual I'd done before every mission in Afghanistan. But this felt different. In Afghanistan, we knew who the enemy was. We knew why we were fighting. This was like fighting shadows, hunting ghosts in our own backyard. Jackson knocked on my door at 5 a.m. Couldn't sleep either. No. He sat down, picking up one of the satellite photos. My grandpa used to tell stories about these mountains. Said there were places up there that had been forgotten by maps. Towns that dried up and blew away. But sometimes, he said, the people didn't all leave. They just stopped wanting to be found. You believe that? I believe that the Appalachian Mountains are older than most mountains on Earth. I believe they've seen everything humans can do to each other, and they keep those secrets well. And I believe that tomorrow night we're going to find something that someone worked very hard to hide. The day passed too quickly. Final meetings, equipment checks, practice runs. By 5 p.m. we were loading into the helicopter. The crew chief was someone I'd flown with before. He pulled me aside. "Heard you're going into the mountains," he said. "Be careful up there. We've been flying supply runs to fire bases all over these hills, and the pilots talk. They say there are places where instruments go crazy, where GPS just stops working. Dead zones, they call them. Copper Creek is one of them. Never flown there specifically, but it's in the area. These mountains have magnetic problems. Underground iron deposits. All kinds of scientific reasons. But the old-timers who fly these routes just say the mountains don't like being watched from above." We took off as the sun touched the western hills, painting them orange and red like they were already on fire. Below us, the normal world fell away. Towns became tiny dots of light. Roads became thin lines. And then there was nothing but forest and shadow. Rodriguez checked his equipment. Communications are good. GPS solid. Weather holding. Thompson had his rifle across his lap, his fingers checking the magazine, the safety, the scope mounts without thinking. Reeves was reviewing his medical supplies one more time. Jackson stared out the window at the darkening mountains. 2-minute warning, the crew chief called. I looked at my team. Remember, we're ghosts. We see but aren't seen. We find those missing people if we can. But our main job is to gather information. We need to know what's happening in that town. They nodded. We'd all done this before in one form or another. But as the helicopter came down toward a small clearing on a hill, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. We weren't going into enemy territory in a foreign country. We were in Kentucky, in the United States, about to check on American citizens who had apparently decided they didn't want to be part of America anymore. The helicopter touched down and we were out, moving fast into the trees. The helicopter lifted immediately, its blades beating the air as it disappeared over the hill. In seconds, the sound faded and we were alone with the forest. I checked my GPS. 5 miles to Copper Creek. All of it through rough land in the dark. "Let's move," I whispered. We lined up. Jackson in front, me behind him, Rodriguez and Reeves in the middle, Thompson watching our back. We moved slowly, carefully, using night vision to see the forest floor. Every step had to be thought about. Every sound had to be checked. An hour in, Jackson held up his fist. We froze. He pointed to his ear, then ahead. I heard it too. Voices, quiet but clear. We slowly moved forward until we could see light through the trees. A campfire. 2 men sitting beside it. They wore military-style clothes but no badges. Rifles leaned against a log beside them. Told him we'd have problems with the feds eventually. One was saying, "Should have listened to Morrison when he said to move the whole operation underground." "Morrison's too worried," the other replied. "We've been here 2 years without problems. Besides, where else would we go? This place is perfect. Isolated. Easy to defend. And nobody cares about some dead mining town. What about those survey people? What about them? They're contained. Morrison will decide what to do with them when he gets back from the city." My blood turned cold. They had the survey team. They were alive, but contained didn't sound good. #meeting Morrison, the veterans leader. The first man stood up, stretching. "I'm going to check the edge sensors. Radio if you see anything." Edge sensors. That made things much harder. We waited until the man had moved away, then carefully backed up. When we were far enough to whisper, I gathered the team. "They've got electronic sensors watching the area. We need to be more careful." "I can handle sensors," Rodriguez said, "but I need to know what kind they're using." We spent another hour moving carefully through the forest, avoiding 2 more guard posts. These weren't weekend warriors playing soldier. They had discipline, equipment, and from what we could tell, a command structure. Finally, we reached a hill overlooking Copper Creek. What we saw made my stomach drop. Copper Creek Town lay below us like it had been lifted straight out of a military guide for forward bases. What used to be a scattered mining town had been turned into a strong settlement. Shipping containers and watchtowers made from wood stood at key points. Barbed wire fences with chain link sections that hadn't been in our satellite photos from a month ago were now there. Lights, currently off, had been put up to remove shadows. This wasn't new. This was the result of years of careful building. Rodriguez pulled out his night vision scope to look at the setup. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Those are military-grade motion sensors on the fence line. See the boxes? That's the same system we used in Bagram." Through my own scope, I counted buildings. The old company store had been strengthened and made bigger. What used to be the town hall showed lights in many windows. The church tower had been turned into a lookout post. But most disturbing was the mine entrance itself. Fresh wood supported the opening, and industrial lighting suggested it was being used. "How many people?" Thompson asked, looking through his rifle scope. "I count at least 15 on security alone," I said. "Could be 50 or more total based on the buildings showing activity." Jackson pointed to the eastern edge of town. "Martinez, those are military trucks. Deuce and a halves. At least 3 Humvees. How the hell did they get those?" "Same way they got everything else," Rodriguez said grimly. "They stole them." We spent 2 hours watching, taking notes, memorizing patterns. Guards changed shifts at midnight. 6 men replacing 6 others. They used proper radio talk, checking in at regular times. Someone had trained these people well. "There," Reeves pointed to the northwest corner. "That building with the red roof. Guards just delivered food trays. That's got to be where they're holding the survey team." He was right. It was the only building with guards standing directly outside, and they faced inward, not outward. They were keeping people in, not out. "We need to get closer," I said. "Rodriguez, can you get us past those sensors?" He studied the layout for a long moment. "Maybe. They've got overlapping fields, but there's a drainage ditch on the south side. If it's deep enough, we might be able to crawl under the sensor line." "That's a lot of maybes. You want guarantees? We should have brought a full battalion." He had a point. We waited another hour watching the patterns, timing when the guards changed. At 2 a.m., the compound seemed to settle into a late-night rhythm. Most buildings went dark except for the command post and the prisoner building. "Thompson, you stay here. Watch from above. Anything goes wrong, you cover our exit." He nodded, already setting up his rifle position. The rest of us moved down the hill slowly, testing every footstep. The forest ended 50 meters from the fence line. Cleared ground that would leave us in the open. But Rodriguez had been right about the drainage ditch. It was a concrete channel, probably for water runoff from the mine, about 3 feet deep. We crawled into it. Muddy water immediately soaked through our gear. The smell was rust and rot, decades of mountain water. Rodriguez led, holding a small device in his hand that I knew was a frequency scanner. He was checking for the electronic signal of the sensors. "Active infrared," he whispered. "Beam brake system. Stay below the edge of the ditch and we're invisible." We crawled for what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes. My elbows and knees scraped raw on the concrete. Behind me, Jackson's breathing was controlled but heavy. His bigger body made the tight space harder to move through. Rodriguez held up his fist. We froze. Footsteps above us on the ground beside the ditch. A guard walking the edge. His boot kicked a rock that clattered down into the channel, landing inches from Reeves's hand. We held our breath. The footsteps paused, then continued. Finally, we reached a tunnel that passed under the fence. On the other side, we were in the compound. Rodriguez checked his scanner again. "We're clear for 20 meters. Then there's another sensor line around the inner buildings." We crawled out of the ditch and into the shadow of what had been an equipment shed. The metal walls were rusty but solid. From here, we could see the prisoner building clearly. 2 guards out front, both alert. The windows were covered with boards from the outside. "How do we get in?" Jackson asked. I studied the building. "Back door. Has to have one. Building codes. even in 1978. We circled wide, using every shadow, every building for cover. The compound was quiet but not asleep. Somewhere a generator hummed. A door opened and closed. Voices carried on the wind but too quiet to understand. The back of the prisoner building had a door, but it was locked from the outside with a padlock. Reeves pulled out a set of bolt cutters from his pack. The snap when he cut the lock seemed to echo like a gunshot, but no alarm sounded. Inside was a hallway, dark and narrow. We moved by feel and night vision. 3 doors on each side. I tried the first. Empty. The second had supplies stacked inside. The third was locked from the outside with a sliding bolt. I slid it open carefully. Inside, shapes huddled against the far wall. One moved, starting to speak, and I quickly put my hand over their mouth. U.S. Army, I whispered. We're here to help. Are you the geological survey team? The man nodded hard. I removed my hand. Thank God, he breathed. There are 7 of us. We've been here for 3 weeks. They keep saying someone named Morrison will decide what to do with us. Is anyone hurt? Minor injuries, dehydration, fear. But we're alive. Can you all walk? Yes, but there are guards. We know. Stay quiet. We're getting you out. I turned to Jackson. Check the other rooms. He returned in minutes with the rest of the survey team. 7 regular people looking worn out but able to move. One woman had a geologist's hammer still on her belt, which told me something about her strength. Listen carefully, I said to them. We're going to move fast and quiet. Stay together. Do exactly what we say. Can you do that? They nodded. The woman with the hammer spoke. They've been digging in the mine. Deep. They hit something 2 weeks ago. Some kind of natural cave system. That's when everything changed. They got worried. Doubled the guards. Started talking about protecting the find. What did they find? I don't know. They wouldn't let us see. But they brought in specialists. People with equipment I've never seen outside a university lab. Whatever it is, it's important enough that they're willing to kidnap federal contractors to keep it secret. This was bigger than stolen military supplies. But we didn't have time to learn more. We had to get these people out. Reeves checked the hallway. Clear. We moved out with the regular people sandwiched between us. The compound stayed quiet. Too quiet. My instincts screamed that something was wrong. We made it halfway to the fence when the floodlights blazed to life. Federal agents. Nobody move. But it wasn't federal agents shouting at us. It was them. And they had us surrounded. Red laser dots danced across our chests from at least a dozen rifles. A man walked out from behind a building. Older, with military bearing, wearing colonel's eagles on his collar that I'd bet weren't real. This had to be Morrison. Weapons down, he said calmly. You're outnumbered and outgunned. No need for anyone to die tonight. I kept my rifle up. We're United States Army. You're holding kidnapped civilians and stolen military property. You lower your weapons. He actually smiled. Son, I served 3 tours in Vietnam and 2 in Desert Storm. I know exactly who you are and why you're here. 5-man scout team, probably dropped by helicopter a couple hours ago. Your lookout sniper is on the hill, probably calling for backup right now. Except his radio isn't working. None of your radios are working. We've been jamming everything except our own frequencies since you entered the valley. Rodriguez checked his equipment. He gave me a small shake of his head. Morrison was right. Here's what's going to happen, Morrison continued. You're going to put down your weapons. We're going to have a civil conversation about what we're doing here and why it matters. Then, if you're reasonable men, you and these civilians leave, and you report that you found nothing but some surveyors who got lost in the mountains. That's not going to happen. No? Look around, Sergeant. I have 42 combat veterans here. Men and women who served their country and got abandoned by it. Veterans who came home to no jobs, no healthcare, no hope. We built this place. We made something from nothing. And now we found something that could change everything. And I will not let the government steal it from us like they've stolen everything else. What did you find? His smile widened. The future. The past. Proof that these mountains hold secrets that make every war we've fought look like children playing in sand. But you won't believe me unless you see it. So here's my offer. You and your men come with me. 1 hour. Let me show you what we found. Then decide if you want to fight us or join us. We're not joining anything. 1 hour, he said. Then you can take the civilians and go. You have my word as a former officer. Jackson shifted beside me. Sarge, this is messed up. He was right, but we were outnumbered. Our radios were down, and Thompson couldn't take out 40 targets before they cut us down. 1 hour, I agreed. But the civilians stay here safe. Fair enough. Morrison turned to his men. Stand down, but stay alert. Then to us, follow me. #strange buildings in the mine. We walked deeper into the compound toward the mine entrance. My team stayed tight, weapons lowered but ready. The civilians stayed under guard but unharmed. The mine entrance had been heavily fixed up. Modern supports, electric lighting, air systems. We went down on a rail cart system that had been restored to working condition. The temperature dropped as we went deeper. The walls changed from coal black to something else. Limestone, then granite, then something I didn't recognize. The original mine followed a coal seam, Morrison explained as we went down. But in 1978, they broke through into something else. A natural cave system that shouldn't exist at this depth. The company sealed it and left the mine rather than report it. 15 men didn't die in a crash. They died because of what they found down here. What are you talking about? You'll see. We traveled for 10 minutes, deeper than any coal mine should go. Then the tunnel opened into a huge cave lit by industrial lights Morrison's people had put in. What I saw made me forget about weapons, about the mission, about everything except the impossible thing before my eyes. Buildings. Not natural rock formations, but built buildings carved directly from the stone. Archways, columns, what looked like stairs going up the far wall to passages that led deeper into the mountain. The design was wrong somehow. Angles that hurt to look at. Sizes that seemed to shift depending on how you looked at them. Carbon dating says this is over 10,000 years old, Morrison said. Older than any known civilization in North America. Heck, older than most known civilizations anywhere. But that's not the most amazing part. He led us to a section where his people had set up equipment. Scientific tools I couldn't name. Computers. Cameras. On one table lay artifacts. Metal objects that looked like tools but made no sense. Crystal structures that seemed to glow with their own light. And photographs of wall carvings that showed things I couldn't understand. Every government conspiracy theory is wrong, Morrison said. It's not aliens. It's not secret societies. It's this evidence that human history is a lie. That there were civilizations before civilizations. Knowledge we've lost. Technology we can't understand. And it's all here under these mountains. Rodriguez was looking at one of the instruments. This is reading energy signals that shouldn't exist. Electromagnetic fields that are God. This is impossible. Now you understand, Morrison said. This isn't about stolen supplies or kidnapped civilians. This is about the find of the century. And if we report it, what happens? The government takes over, classifies everything, and the truth never sees light. These men and women who found this, who've protected it, they deserve better. We all deserve the truth. I stared at the buildings, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Every piece of training, every bit of logic said this was impossible. But it was right there, carved in stone older than human civilization should be. You kidnapped civilians, I said, trying to focus on what I knew was real. To protect this, they stumbled onto our operation. We couldn't let them leave until we decided how to reveal this properly. We weren't going to hurt them. And the stolen military supplies? Survival. We needed equipment to secure and study this site. The government wasn't going to give it to us. So we took it. Call it payment for tours in wars that meant nothing, while this something that means everything sat hidden. Jackson stepped forward, studying the carved walls. Sarge, if this is real, it changes everything. It changes everything, Morrison finished. Every idea about human history, about what's possible, about who we are as a species. And it's not just this cave. We found passages that go deeper, much deeper. This whole mountain range could be hollow, filled with these buildings. My brain was working hard, trying to make sense of the things right in front of us. Ancient buildings hidden beneath the Appalachian Mountains, far older than our known history. All my instincts whispered that what I was seeing was wrong, impossible. But the evidence was carved in stone and measured with tools that don't lie. How many people know about this? I asked Morrison. The 42 in my compound, and now you. We've kept it secret for 2 years while we documented everything. We have massive amounts of data, hundreds of artifacts, surveys of at least 12 miles of passages. 12 miles? He nodded. And that's just what we've explored safely. Some passages go deeper than we can measure. Others are blocked by cave-ins or flooded. We think the full system could extend under 3 states. Reeves was looking at the wall carvings with his flashlight. These symbols, they're not random. It's a language. Dr. Chun was working on that before. Morrison caught himself. Before he had his accident. What accident? Morrison's face darkened. Not all the passages are safe. Some have structural damage. Others have things we don't understand. Sound properties that cause hallucinations. Electromagnetic problems that affect equipment and people. We've lost 3 men in 2 years. Chun was lucky. He just lost his mind for a while. He's recovering. You're telling me this place is dangerous? I'm telling you this place is beyond our current understanding. It's like handling nuclear material in the 1890s. We know there's power here, but we don't fully understand it. Rodriguez had moved to one of the computers studying readouts. These energy signals, they're not random. They're pulsing in a pattern, like a heartbeat but much slower. One pulse every 12 hours. Morrison nodded. In sync with the tides, even though we're hundreds of miles from the ocean and thousands of feet underground. This place is connected to natural rhythms we don't understand. I forced myself to focus on the mission. This is fascinating, but we have jobs to do. Those civilians need to be released. The stolen equipment needs to be returned. Does it? Morrison challenged. Look around you, Sergeant. This discovery makes every military fight, every political argument, every money crisis seem unimportant. We're talking about rewriting human history, and you want to worry about some stolen radios and trucks. I want to worry about the law, about the chain of command, about the fact that you've created an armed compound on American soil. Morrison laughed bitterly. Chain of command? I followed the chain of command for 30 years. It got me Agent Orange exposure, Gulf War syndrome, and a pension that doesn't cover my medical bills. These people followed the chain of command too. It got them homeless, addicted, forgotten. We're done following orders from people who see us as throwaway. So you started your own army? I started a community. Veterans who understand discipline, sacrifice, and loyalty to something greater than themselves. And now we found that something. Jackson had wandered deeper into the cave, his light playing across distant buildings. Sarge, you need to see this. We followed him to what looked like a central chamber. The ceiling rose beyond our light's reach. The floor had patterns that looked almost like circuit boards made in stone. In the center sat something that made my blood run cold. Hashtag the impossible artifact, the sphere. It was a sphere maybe 3 feet across, made of a material that wasn't quite metal, wasn't quite stone. It floated 3 inches above a stand, rotating slowly without any visible support. Its surface was covered in the same symbol language as the walls, but these symbols seemed to shift and change as we watched. We call it the heart, Morrison said. It's the source of the electromagnetic problems. As far as we can tell, it's been active for thousands of years, maybe longer. Active? It's doing something? Processing, calculating, waiting. We don't know, but it responds to presence. Watch. He stepped closer to the sphere. The symbols on its surface began moving faster. I felt a vibration in my chest, like standing too close to a huge speaker. The air itself seemed to thicken. It knows we're here, Morrison said. It reacts to human closeness. Sometimes it shows images, projections. We've seen star maps that don't match our sky. We've seen what might be math proofs that our scientists can't understand. We've seen what looked like warnings, but we can't decode them. Rodriguez approached with a handheld sensor. The electromagnetic field is off the charts. This thing is making more power than a small nuclear reactor, but there's no heat, no radiation. It's impossible. Yet here it is, Morrison said. And this is just one chamber. We found 17 similar artifacts, though none as large or active as this one. I stared at the sphere, hypnotized by its slow rotation. Part of me wanted to touch it, to understand it. Another part, the part that had kept me alive through 2 tours, screamed danger. We need to report this, I said. This is beyond military control. This needs scientists, archaeologists, physicists, all of whom will be controlled by the government. Morrison interrupted. They'll classify it, compartmentalize it, and the public will never know. How many discoveries have been buried in black sites? How many truths have been deemed too dangerous for ordinary people? You don't know that, don't I? Look up Project Stargate, MK Ultra, operations we know about only because someone leaked them decades later. This would be bigger than all of them combined. They'd bury it so deep it would never see light. Thompson's voice crackled through my earpiece, barely audible through static. Sarge, movement on the hill. Multiple vehicles approaching. About 20 minutes before they reached the compound. Morrison heard it too. His radio was clearer. Federal response, he said. Your backup. Though I'm surprised they got here so quickly. We need to get back to the surface, I said. Yes, Morrison agreed. But first you need to decide. Are you going to tell them about this? Are you going to let them take this away from the only people who've protected it? Or are you going to buy us time to document everything and release it properly? That's not my decision to make, isn't it? You're the one who's seen it. You're the one who will write the report. You can say you found some veterans camping in an abandoned town. Maybe some stolen supplies. Nothing worth a major operation. Give us 6 months to finish our documentation. Then we'll go public with everything. The sphere pulsed. For a moment I could have sworn I saw something in its surface. A face, ancient and impossible, watching us with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations we'd never heard of. Sarge, Jackson said quietly. He's got a point. This is bigger than our mission. This is bigger than everything. This is way bigger, Rodriguez added, still staring at his instruments. Reeves stayed silent, but I could see him documenting everything with his phone, taking pictures and video evidence. But for whom? We go back up, I decided. We take the civilians. We leave. What I put in my report. I'll decide that after I've had time to think. Morrison studied me. That's all I can ask. But understand, if the government comes for this, we won't give it up without a fight. These mountains are our home now. This discovery is our purpose. We've all found something worth dying for. We rode the rail cart back to the surface in silence. My mind struggled to process what I'd seen. Every logical part of me said it was impossible. But the evidence was overwhelming. Ancient buildings, impossible technology, a history that came before everything we knew. As we came out of the mine, the compound was in motion. Morrison's people were taking defensive positions, preparing for the approaching federal forces. But there was no panic, just disciplined preparation. The survey team was where we'd left them, under guard but unharmed. Morrison, true to his word, released them to us. You have maybe 10 minutes before those vehicles arrive, he said. I suggest you make contact. Let them know you have the civilians safe. It might prevent unnecessary violence. I got on the radio, finally clear of the jamming. This is Sergeant Martinez. We have secured the 7 civilian surveyors. They're unharmed. Requesting immediate pickup. No hostile action needed. Harrison's voice came back immediately. Confirm all civilians accounted for. Confirmed. 7 people all able to walk. The situation is complex but contained. Recommend holding back approaching units. There was a pause. Explain complex, I looked at Morrison, at my team, at the mine entrance that led to impossibilities. Will provide full debrief upon pickup. Currently no immediate threat. Another pause. Understood. Pickup inbound. Hold position. Morrison extended his hand. You're doing the right thing, Sergeant. Truth needs time to breathe before it can live. I didn't shake his hand. We're not allies. You kidnapped civilians. You stole military property. Whatever you found down there doesn't change that. No, he agreed. But it changes everything else. Hashtag the government response. The pickup helicopters arrived 15 minutes later, along with enough federal agents to occupy a small country. Morrison's people didn't resist as the compound was secured, though I noticed several of them had disappeared into the forest. Morrison himself stood calmly as he was arrested, saying nothing about what lay beneath the mountain. During the flight out, I sat with my team. None of us spoke about what we'd seen. The civilians were questioned separately. From what I overheard, they knew nothing about the caves. They had been kept on the surface the entire time. Back at Fort Campbell, the questioning was intense. I told them about the compound, the veterans, the stolen supplies. I mentioned they'd been digging in the old mine for unknown reasons. I said nothing about ancient buildings, impossible artifacts, or spheres that defied physics. My team followed my lead. We'd found a militia compound with kidnapped civilians. We'd secured their release. Mission accomplished. But Rodriguez kept the sensor readings. Reeves had his photos. Jackson had samples of stone that shouldn't exist. And I had memories that would haunt me for the rest of my life. Morrison was charged with kidnapping, theft of military property, and conspiracy. Most of his people scattered, disappearing into the mountains they knew so well. The compound was taken apart. The mine entrance sealed with concrete. Officially, the case was closed. Unofficially, I knew it had just begun. 3 weeks later, I received an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize. Contained huge amounts of data, photographs, videos, sensor readings, translations of the wall symbols. Everything Morrison's group had documented over 2 years. The email had one line of text. The truth wants to be free. Your choice if it flies or stays buried. I stared at that data for hours. Evidence of a lost civilization, of technology we couldn't understand, of a history that would shatter every idea about human development. Morrison was right. This was bigger than everything. But I was a soldier. I followed orders. I protected my country. The question was, what was I protecting it from? The truth or those who would use that truth for their own purposes? I thought about those veterans in the compound, broken by the system they'd served. They'd found something worth protecting in those mountains. They'd built a community around an impossible discovery. And now they were scattered. Their discovery buried under federal concrete. Rodriguez called me that night. You thinking what I'm thinking? Depends what you're thinking. I'm thinking some things are too big to stay hidden. I'm thinking maybe Morrison wasn't wrong about everything. That's dangerous thinking. Yeah, but those readings I took, I've run them through every database I can access. Nothing like them exists in our physics. This is world-changing stuff, Sarge. This is the kind of discovery that changes how we understand reality. Or gets us court-martialed for releasing classified information. Only classified if we make it classified. Right now, it's just some weird readings from a cave in Kentucky. Jackson and Reeves called me the next day in a group call. They'd been doing their own research. Jackson had taken his stone samples to a geology professor friend. The professor couldn't identify the mineral makeup. Reeves had shown his photos to an anthropologist who specialized in pre-Columbian American cultures. She'd never seen anything like the symbols. We were sitting on evidence of the greatest archaeological discovery in human history, and we were the only ones who knew the full truth. Morrison and his people were being prosecuted for crimes that seemed small compared to the importance of what they'd found. That night, I made a decision that went against every oath I'd taken as a soldier. #decision to leak everything. I sat in my apartment outside Fort Campbell, staring at the encrypted hard drive Morrison had sent me. 20 terabytes of evidence that human history was a lie. Every military rule I'd ever learned told me to turn this over to my superiors. Let the chain of command handle it. But Morrison's words echoed. How many truths had been buried in classified files, deemed too dangerous for the public? The official investigation was wrapping up. Morrison had been transferred to federal custody, charged with enough crimes to keep him locked away for life. 16 of his people had been arrested. The rest vanished into the Appalachian wilderness. The compound was being taken apart. The mine sealed. In a week, it would be like none of it ever happened. Except for the 4 of us who knew better. Rodriguez arrived first, carrying a laptop and looking like he hadn't slept in days. I've been analyzing the energy patterns from that sphere, he said without greeting. It's not random. It's a carrier wave like a signal, but operating on frequencies we don't use. Heck, frequencies we didn't know existed. A signal for what? That's the question. But here's what's interesting. I cross-referenced the pattern with geological surveys of the Appalachians. There are magnetic problems all along the range that match this frequency. It's like the whole mountain chain is resonating. Jackson and Reeves showed up together. Jackson had a bag full of geology books and maps. Reeves brought medical journals and a bottle of whiskey. Figured we'd need it, he said. We spread everything across my living room floor. Morrison's photos, our own documentation, geological surveys, historical records. The picture that came together was staggering. Look at this, Jackson said, pointing to a map. Every major magnetic problem in the Appalachians matches up with a town that was abandoned suddenly. Not slow economic abandonment. Sudden. People just left or disappeared. I've been researching, Reeves added. The Appalachians have the highest rate of unexplained disappearances in the country. Everyone assumes it's because of the terrain, people getting lost. But what if some of them found places like Copper Creek? Rodriguez pulled up satellite imagery on his laptop. I've been tracking heat signals in abandoned areas. Look at this. The screen showed thermal imaging of supposedly empty mountain regions. Dozens of heat spots, too regular to be natural, too isolated to be explained. There are more sites, I said, the realization hitting like cold water. Morrison's group didn't just find one ancient complex. These things are all over the mountains. Which means others know, Jackson said. Morrison can't have been the first to find one of these places. So where are the other discoveries? Buried, Rodriguez answered. Classified, hidden. Or the discoverers just disappeared. We spent hours going through Morrison's data. The translations his people had managed were incomplete, but suggested something incredible. The builders of these buildings weren't just ancient. They were advanced in ways we couldn't understand. References to manipulating stone flow and earth blood, to traveling between shadows, to a catastrophe that broke the sky roof. This reads like mythology, Reeves said. Maybe mythology is just history we don't understand, Jackson countered. My secure phone rang. Colonel Harrison. Martinez, I need you in my office. Now. The drive to base felt like heading to an execution. Harrison's office was dark except for his desk lamp. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Sit, he ordered. I did. I've been reviewing the after-action reports from Copper Creek, he said. They're thorough, professional, complete. I said nothing. I've also been notified that certain members of your team have been making inquiries, geological surveys, anthropological consultations, electromagnetic frequency analysis. Would you like to explain? Sir, He held up a hand. Before you answer, understand that this conversation is not being recorded. This is between you and me, soldier to soldier. I studied his face. 20 years of military service had taught me to read people. Harrison wasn't threatening me. He was conflicted. What did you really find in that mine, Tom? I made a choice. I told him everything. The buildings, the artifacts, the sphere. Morrison's claims about a lost civilization. The evidence that supported it. Harrison listened without interrupting, his face never changing. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. In 1987, I was a lieutenant in the 82nd Airborne. We were sent to secure a downed weather balloon in the Tennessee mountains. It wasn't a balloon. It was a cave system with buildings similar to what you described. Angles that hurt to look at. Artifacts that couldn't exist. We documented everything, turned it over to command, and were told to forget it ever happened. What happened to the site? Officially, mining accident caused a cave-in. Unofficially, they bombed it, collapsed the entire mountain face, buried it under 1,000,000 tons of rock. Why? Harrison walked to his window. Because some doors are meant to stay closed, Tom. Because humanity isn't ready for some truths. Because the people who make these decisions believe that stability is more important than knowledge. Do you believe that? He was quiet for a long moment. I used to, but I've spent 30 years wondering what we destroyed, what we might have learned, whether we had the right to make that choice for everyone. Morrison's people documented everything. They have proof. Morrison's going to federal prison. His people are scattered or arrested. That proof will disappear into a black site. And in 50 years, maybe someone will file a Freedom of Information request and get back pages of blacked out nothing. Unless someone leaks it. Harrison turned to look at me. That would be treason, Sergeant. Career ending at minimum. Federal prison at worst. Yes, sir. It would have to be done carefully, anonymously, through channels that couldn't be traced back to the source. Multiple news outlets, foreign and domestic. Scientific communities that would be hard to silence. A coordinated release that couldn't be contained. I stared at him. He wasn't warning me. He was instructing me. Hypothetically speaking, he continued, if someone were to do such a thing, they'd want to wait until the official investigation was closed, until attention had moved on. They'd want to ensure the safety of any witnesses. Maybe establish dead man's switches in case of payback. And they'd want to disappear afterward, at least for a while. Hypothetically. I'm retiring in 6 months, Harrison said. Full pension. House in Montana. Completely off the grid. Amazing how isolated some parts of this country still are. Perfect for someone who wants to disappear. He pulled a business card from his desk. Blank except for an email address. A friend of mine runs a security consulting firm. Specializes in protecting whistleblowers. Hypothetically, if someone needed that kind of help, this would be the person to contact. I took the card. Dismissed, Sergeant. And Tom, whatever decision you make it for the right reasons. Not for glory, not for anger, but because it's the right thing to do. I left his office understanding that the conspiracy went higher than Morrison had imagined. There were people in the system who knew, who'd been sitting on this knowledge for decades, waiting for someone with the courage to let it free. That night, I met with my team one last time. Harrison knows, I told them. He's known about sites like this since the 80s. He's giving us a choice. Bury it or expose it. What's the risk? Reeves asked. Everything. Career. Freedom. Maybe our lives. This is the kind of secret that people disappear over. And if we do nothing? Jackson asked. Then it stays buried. Morrison goes to prison for protecting the greatest discovery in human history. And we spend the rest of our lives knowing we could have changed everything and chose not to. Rodriguez had been typing on his laptop. I've been building a distribution network. WikiLeaks. Major newspapers. Scientific journals. Social media influencers with millions of followers. If we do this, we do it all at once. Overwhelming force. Too much for them to contain. We'd need to protect Morrison's people, I said. The ones who scattered. They're witnesses. I can reach some of them, Jackson said. Mountain folk have their own networks. They don't trust outsiders, but they trust veterans. This is sedition, Reeves said quietly. We're talking about exposing classified information that could destabilize governments, religions, the entire understanding of human history. Yes, I agreed. The question is, does humanity have the right to know its own history? Or do we let a handful of people decide what truth we can handle? We sat in silence, each wrestling with the decision. Finally, Rodriguez spoke. My grandmother fled Cuba because the government decided what people could know, what truth they could have. She always told me that freedom meant the right to truth, even uncomfortable truth. Especially uncomfortable truth. I joined the army to protect people, Jackson said. But protect them from what? External threats or from their own history? That's not protection. That's control. Reeves poured 4 glasses of whiskey. To the truth, then, whatever it costs. We drank. And with that, committed ourselves to what would either be the greatest revelation in human history or our complete destruction. Hashtag the truth goes public. Over the next 3 months, we carefully built our case. Rodriguez created an untraceable distribution system using dark web protocols and encrypted channels. Jackson made contact with Morrison's scattered people, organizing safe houses and escape routes. Reeves documented everything medical, the psychological effects of exposure to the sites, the physical problems detected near the artifacts. I coordinated it all while maintaining the appearance of a normal military routine. Harrison helped without ever acknowledging it. Duty assignments that gave us travel opportunities. Intelligence briefings that happened to mention surveillance schedules. Budget allocations that didn't ask too many questions about equipment purchases. We set the release date for winter solstice. Symbolic but also practical. Government agencies would be operating with skeleton crews over the holidays. Response would be slower. The week before release, I visited Morrison in federal detention. He'd aged years and months, but his eyes were still sharp. "You're going to do it," he said. It wasn't a question. "The truth wants to be free." I quoted his message back to him. "They'll come for you. They came for me, and I was just sitting on it. You release it, you become target number 1. We know. My people, the ones who got away, they're still out there. Still exploring. There are more sites. Deeper ones. What we found at Copper Creek was just an entrance. The real discoveries are further down, in places that haven't seen light since before the Ice Age. What do you think it all means?" "Who were they?" Morrison leaned forward. "I think they were us. An earlier version of humanity that reached heights we can't imagine. And I think something happened. Something catastrophic that destroyed them so completely that only these deep places survived. And I think that's why the government keeps it secret. Because if it happened once, it can happen again. Or they're trying to prevent it from happening again. Maybe. Or maybe they're trying to recreate it. Some of the artifacts we found, the ones I didn't document, they were weapons. Or what might have been weapons. Things that could reshape mountains. Redirect rivers. The power to build or destroy on a scale we can't comprehend. Where are these artifacts now? Hidden. My people who escaped, they took them. Insurance, you might say. If this knowledge is going to come out, it needs to come out completely. Not just the safe parts. He gave me coordinates. Memorized locations across the Appalachians where his people had hidden artifacts and additional documentation. When you release everything, include these locations. Let the world race to find them before the government can bury them again. 3 days before the release, we scattered. Jackson went to ground in the Tennessee mountains with his contacts. Rodriguez crossed into Mexico, then flew to Iceland, a country with strong protection for information freedom. Reeves disappeared into the Canadian wilderness. I stayed in plain sight, maintaining my routine, giving them no reason to suspect. On December 21st, at exactly midnight GMT, 20 terabytes of data flooded the internet. Every major news outlet received copies. Scientific journals found detailed analyses in their submission systems. Social media exploded with images, videos, and documents. The distribution was so widespread, so simultaneous, that containment was impossible. Photos of the Copper Creek buildings appeared on the front page of the New York Times. The Guardian ran with energy readings from the sphere. Le Monde published the partial translations. Within hours, #AncientAmericans was trending globally. The response was immediate and chaotic. The Department of Defense issued denials, then retractions, then silence. Scientists demanded access to the sites. Religious leaders called it either revelation or heresy. Conspiracy theorists claimed vindication. Ordinary people didn't know what to believe. Harrison called me 12 hours after release. They know it was you. I know. Federal agents are en route to your location. I know. There's a car outside your building. Keys in the visor. Interstate 24 to Chattanooga. Then follow the Appalachian chain north. Morrison's people will find you. Sir, I don't know anything about any of this, Sergeant. But if I did, I'd say you did the right thing. Now move. I grabbed my go bag and ran. The car was there as promised. As I drove away, I saw black SUVs arriving at my building in the rearview mirror. The drive into the mountains felt like coming home. Every mile took me deeper into the ancient hills that held impossible secrets. Morrison's people found me near the Virginia border, appearing out of the forest like ghosts. They'd been waiting, watching, protecting the hidden sites for those who would eventually come seeking truth. They took me to one of the deeper sites Morrison had mentioned. Not Copper Creek, that was crawling with federal agents now, but another entrance. Older, more remote. The passages here went deeper. The buildings more complex. The symbols on the walls told stories we were only beginning to understand. The government will try to contain this, one of Morrison's people said. She'd been a Marine, done 3 tours in Iraq before finding purpose in these mountains. They'll say it's a hoax, foreign interference, anything to discredit it. Let them try, I said. The evidence is out there now. Too much to deny, too widespread to contain. Scientists around the world are analyzing it. Independent expeditions are already forming. And you? What will you do? I looked at the ancient passages stretching into the mountain's heart. What Morrison started. Document everything. Protect it. Share it. The truth isn't just free now. It needs guardians. Hashtag what this means for humanity. 6 months later, the world had changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, but fundamentally. The existence of a prehistoric advanced civilization was no longer fringe theory, but accepted fact. Governments were forced to acknowledge decades of hidden discoveries. Sites across the world were being revealed, examined, explored. Morrison was released when public pressure became overwhelming. He became something of a folk hero, the veteran who'd protected humanity's hidden history from those who would bury it. The charges weren't dropped, but no jury would convict him after the truth came out. Rodriguez emerged from Iceland as a hero of information freedom. Reeves returned from Canada to find himself in demand as one of the few medical professionals with experience of the site's effects. Jackson never really came down from the mountains, but his messages told us he was happy, living with people who understood that some truths were worth any sacrifice. As for me, I stayed in the mountains. Officially, I was a fugitive. Unofficially, I was part of a growing community of researchers, explorers, and guardians who worked to understand and protect these ancient sites. The government still wanted to control them, but public awareness made that impossible. These places belong to humanity now, not to any nation or agency. Harrison retired as planned, disappearing into Montana. But sometimes encrypted messages would arrive with intelligence about government movements, warnings about new attempts at containment. The colonel had chosen his side, even if he could never publicly admit it. The deeper we explored, the more we discovered. Chambers with star maps showing Earth's position in the galaxy from millions of years ago. Technologies based on principles we were only beginning to understand. Records of a civilization that had reached for the stars and nearly made it before something brought them crashing down. But most importantly, we found warnings. The same symbols repeated in every site, showing a cycle. Rise, peak, catastrophe, fall, rebirth. Over and over, as if these ancients were trying to tell us something crucial about the nature of existence, progress, and survival. Morrison, when he visited the new sites, would stand in these warning chambers for hours. They're trying to tell us how to break the cycle, he'd say. How to avoid what destroyed them, I'd reply. Or warning us that it can't be avoided. Then why leave the messages? Hope. The same reason we released the truth. Hope that the next time around, the next rise might be different. As I write this, 5 years after Copper Creek, the world is still adapting to the new reality. Some embrace it, seeing opportunity and wonder. Others deny it, clinging to old certainties. Governments try to control it. Scientists try to understand it. And ordinary people try to simply live with it. But in these mountains, in hidden valleys and forgotten hollows, the work continues. We map the passages, decode the warnings, and protect the sites from those who would exploit them. We are the guardians of humanity's true history, the keepers of its forgotten past, and possibly the shepherds of its future. Morrison was right about one thing. We'd all found something worth fighting for. Not just the truth about the past, but the possibility of a future where humanity finally understands its place in a cycle larger than nations, longer than recorded history, and more important than any individual life. The Appalachians keep their secrets well. But some secrets are meant to be shared. Some truths, no matter how impossible, demand to be known. And sometimes a small group of broken veterans and lost soldiers can change the world simply by choosing to do the right thing, regardless of the cost. The mountains are calling again. Deeper passages have been found. Older buildings. Clearer warnings. Whatever the ancients were trying to tell us, we're getting closer to understanding it. And when we do, when we finally decode their message completely, humanity will face its greatest choice. Repeat the cycle or break free. I know which one I'm fighting for.